Okay, everybody, welcome to Kremlin File, and we have a treat.
Each of our guests over the past 3 weeks shared a bonus spooky story with us. This episode will be a compilation of them.
With the stories from Chris Burgess, Stephanie Chartel, Stephen Hall, and John Sipher. This is our last installment of Olga?
October Spooky Stories, KGB style.
Olga, I saw a really strange article about Halloween in Russia being banned.
When the Kremlin needs some kind of propaganda,
they pull it out.
Attack Western holidays and suddenly care about family values.
Yeah, exactly.
Like our Republican Party.
Right. I mean, the way Putin acts, and he's banning Halloween is absolutely crazy.
It's ridiculous because while Putin is busy banning Halloween, the Kremlin in itself is a Halloween series.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess without any further ado, let's go with the spooky stories of October. But actually, before we do that, Olga, have you got a spooky story to tell us?
One day I had just, finished research for the day, settled down to watch Maddo. Right when she was discussing someone's assassination, suddenly my TV turns black. I get a weird symbol in the corner of my TV, and then some lyrics with the music volume going up and down, up and down. I actually took photographs.
Really?
And I was like, oh my God, it lasted about a minute and then disappeared, went back to regular programming. Yeah.
God.
Went back to regular programming with Maddo. And then I was like, because I DVR'd her show at the time, I went back to the DVR to replay it. Zero interruption on the recorded version.
Okay, that's really scary.
That was another
that's actually
spooky thing. And that was around the same time Russia had hacked C-SPAN for a minute.
Right.
They hacked several things, and so it was a very bizarre time in 2017 where I feel that they were trying to scare anyone off from actually looking into Kremlin ties with Trump. So
okay, well, nothing like that has ever happened to me, so I can't contribute on this one. But I think we should now cut to the scary stories, and maybe our listeners we'll see which of these actually was the scariest. Okay.
I have photos. I worked on trying to figure out what happened. Spooky October.
Is there a spooky story that you can tell us from your experiences?
Spookiest one, or at least the one that freaked me out the most, was when I was living in Russia. My husband and I were both living there, and he was back in the United States for meetings. I was there by myself. And we lived in a big townhouse on the U.S. Embassy compound. Wow. And so I was up on the third floor asleep. And my dogs, I had 2 dogs at the time, 2 little Scotties that basically had the run of the first floor. I know, they're great. They're very friendly, Scotty dogs.
Yeah.
They did not sleep in their kennels. I had their kennels in a storage area on the first floor, but they just ran the place on the first floor. So I came down in the morning, and the dogs are nowhere to be found. And they're usually at the bottom of the steps waiting for me, let's go out, let's eat. And so I went and I looked around, and in one of the rooms on the first floor, they were in their crates, locked into their crates. And so I'm like, well,
oh my God.
Oh. So I'm like, what the heck? And so then I let them out and they were fine. And then I looked in the corner and there were all these wire cuttings, as if somebody had come in the night and done some updating of the equipment in the house, probably surveillance equipment. And they just left it there as if to say, we were here. And they left the dogs in the crates.
And to put your dogs away.
Yeah. Which didn't hurt the dogs. The dogs are super friendly, and I'm sure we're just bothering them as they were trying to do their work. But they left everything there as a little screw you, I felt.
Yeah.
We were here, and this is what we were doing. Really interesting that, the Russians run the U.S. Embassy compound. There's hundreds of them that work there. And so if they want to come into your house, they can. Interestingly, there are no Americans allowed to work at the Russian embassy in Washington, D.C.
And why do they allow it? The American embassy has to have, they have to agree to have Russians working there?
No,
then why do they do it?
They do it just to be, kind to the host nation. I think that there's a sense of we're Americans, we're inclusive, we are appreciative of being in your country. We, want to honor the host nation and help the host nation. And so we have, hundreds of them on there.
Wow.
And they really, really run the embassy in essence. And so the fact that they'd have keys to get into the house, but the spookiness is that I was upstairs sleeping during all of this.
Oh man, that is. Oh.
I know. Yeah, I'm sure that
that's
they
like
were
those
about
stories.
not calling.
No, that's
right?
like those stories that you're asleep in your bed and a thief comes into the bedroom, and he's looking at you.
Or
that
spy.
kind of thing. That's horrible. Yeah, or spy.
I have a feeling they were watching somehow to make sure I stayed asleep while they were downstairs doing whatever it was they were doing.
That is creepy.
Okay, that is spooky. I think
mean, we have at least here. Like, we would notify the person like, "Hi, we'll be doing work in your house at this time," not like locking your dogs away. I mean,
yeah.
If there's a competition among spooky stories, I hope I win.
Spooky October. What is the craziest story you have to tell in your time?
Okay, crazy. We want it crazy, Christopher. We want it crazy.
Well, there is a humorous story. So around a couple years before I retired, I was in the field. My wife and I were invited back to Washington so that I would get a very distinguished award. And they had a whole award ceremony, et cetera. I was allowed to bring my kids in. So my kids were living with their mother in the area. And so I went to pick them up. And my eldest son knew where I worked, but my youngest son did not. And he was in high school. My eldest son was out of school. And so I picked them up, put them in the rental car, drove with my wife and I into the headquarters of the CIA. We badged in. Walked through the hallowed hall where the memorial is, through the badge readers, got them in. My son is just going, "This is so cool," right? My youngest, right? My eldest son is going, "So this is where it is," right? So they're having different reactions, but they're not talking to each other. They're just reacting differently.
Right.
We go to the awards suite where we have a mingle. We sit down. They call me up for the award. And they're going through this long litany of whatever it was that I had accomplished and how it was, the greatest thing since sliced bread. It was required this, that, and the other. And my youngest is sitting next to his stepmom, and he leans over to her and he goes, "That's my dad? I thought he was a dweeb." Oh. And he doesn't exactly say this in a stage whisper. Right. And so without missing a beat, the senior agency official who was about to give me this award says, "And remarkably, the entire world thought that he was a dweeb, but in reality, he wasn't."
Oh, that's great. Okay, Christopher. Great.
My kids still think I'm a dweeb.
Aw.
Oh. Well, no. Okay.
No, absolutely
no.
not. Oh, that's
Yes,
all.
they do.
We like dweebs. We're fine with dweebs.
Yeah.
Any overseas stories that you have that were like crazy?
Well, there was this time I was out to meet an asset in the dark of night.
Ooh, we like
And
those things.
I'm sitting in this park. And I'm waiting for the asset to walk into the park. And so we'll have a few moments together to discuss the goings on.
Right.
And I see this activity occur off in the distance, but close enough that they possibly could see me. So I dive to the ground to get out of sight. I dove right into a cow patty.
Oh my God.
So I'm laying there covered in cow shit. So after
that
these
is
folks,
spooky and crazy and
so after these people
At the
leave, I
same
get
time,
up
and
I walk in. I have my meeting, and the individual I was encountering goes, "Man, you smell like shit." And I said, "No, I know I do. Look what just happened to me." And so that is my. That's going to be in my memoir under the more humorous side of espionage.
oh my goodness! Did they say that during the award?
No, they didn't. The award had nothing to do with cows.
Oh, okay. Spooky October.
This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. That's BetterHelp, H-E-L-P.
It is professional therapy done securely online.
All you need to do is log into your account anytime and send a message to your therapist.
The service is available for clients worldwide.
BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches so they can make it easy and free for therapists if needed.
Visit their website and read their testimonials that are posted daily.
And join the over 2 million people who have taken charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. And there's a special offer for Kremlin File listeners. You can get 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com. That's BetterHelp.com/Kremlin File. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today.
Spooky October. During your time, and I'm sure you have several, what is one of the spookiest or craziest stories that happened while you were on the job?
Can I go first on that one?
Go,
he doesn't
John.
want me to take a good one.
and I this is a story I often use when I talk to school groups and such, and it's actually Steve's story. That's why I wanted to jump in. Jump in first.
I knew it
because we were to Moscow together for the first time, and I think it sort of sums up sort of the mentality of how the Russians view intelligence, what it's like to work in Moscow, what kind of oppressive environment it is there. When we go to Russia, it sounds like hyperbole to say we're followed all the time, but we're followed all the time. I mean, if I left my apartment at 2:30 in the morning on a Tuesday, surveillance guys were out there smoking cigarettes ready to pick me up. I say my house had audio and video in it. My house had audio and video in it, bathroom, bedroom, constantly. Everywhere you went, you were followed. Everyone you talked to was questioned. They were zapping the embassy with microwaves. They were trying to break into the embassy. They were trying to suborn people and use people against us. But this is a story I often use just because it's sort of, I think it's pretty funny. And so Steve is a big runner. At least he was back in the day. He's sort of skinny and I'm sort of thick. So some people are built to run away and some people are built to stand and fight. But that aside, so it's springtime and Steve's getting ready to go on his first run because, a long, nasty, cold, dark Russian winter. And so he comes back to his, tall, sort of crappy Russian apartment building and puts on his shoes and gets ready to go for a run and goes down the elevator through the courtyard and sort of out into the big street, works his way on Leninsky Prospect over to Gorky Park to go for a run through the gates of Gorky Park, goes for a run. Comes back, goes to work the next day, comes home, gets ready to go for a run again, and one of his shoes is missing. And he's a pretty meticulous sort of, guy. He's like, wow, that's a little weird. So, couldn't go for a run that day, but goes back to work the next day. And at that time, there weren't a lot of shops, but he was able to get out during the day and get to the Reebok shop and get a new pair of sneakers. And so that night he comes home after sort of again, a long day working and decides he's, go for a run. He's going to do it all this is part of his routine. And so he goes for a run, same thing down Gorky Park along the Naberezhnaya and on the water and back, comes back the next day and one of his shoes is gone again. And so, so he goes, okay, I see what's going on here. So he walks into his living room, looks up at the ceiling and says, okay, here's the deal. I need to run. I'm going to run every day. And here's what I'm going to do. At 6:45, I will leave this. I will cross the street here. I'm going to go this way. My route is down this. I'll be coming back. Out loud, explain this whole route to his ceiling, knowing that there's listening device in the ceiling. And when he goes to work the next day, and when he comes back the next day to go for a run, both sets of shoes are back in place in his bedroom. And when he goes, goes through those gates of Gorky Park, he sees the surveillance cars up sort of in front of him, open the boot of the car, and out come little foldable bicycles so they can follow him around the park.
Oh,
and so
my God.
What had happened is that the surveillance teams who follow you all the time weren't ready for him to go running, and they were embarrassed, and they probably had to tell their bosses, we weren't ready, and we lost him. And so that was their way of signaling to him that was unacceptable. And until he communicated to them and made their job easier, that was the game they were going to play.
So they're like little rats. Come and
Sorry
steal
to take that story,
sneakers.
Steve.
Now I got to think up a John Sipher story. Where
No,
something
that's probably not why. That's not why.
Can I just ask a question, though? Because this surveillance thing kind of freaks me out. Like, if I think somebody is watching me all the time, you must do training, right? What do? You just get it out of your mind? How do you handle it?
We actually do go through psychological testing beforehand.
Ooh.
So essentially, if you're married and your spouse, they need to understand that your children are going to be watched and tailed to school. They're going to watch you have sex in bed. They're going to watch what you're doing. They're going to listen to your fights. And so unless you're ready for that and understand what you can say at home and what you can't say at home, it's a real problem. And a lot of people are turned down because of the psychological testing. And so, it's something, it just becomes part of your second mind. When you're out, even if you're drinking, you're with friends, what you can say and not say.
Wow.
You're followed place. I was single. I'd sometimes go on dates and I'd be like with somebody, and then they would be like thuggy surveillance guys sitting watching me taking pictures. The date might not realize it and stuff. So it's part of your world. It is probably meant in some fashion to, rattle you, to see how you react to it. If you have trouble with it, maybe that gives them a reason to approach you, to try to get you off your game. And they also play games where they'll put a lot of people on you to sort of press you and oppress you. And then other times they'll be way back to make you think, oh, maybe I'm not under surveillance, so that maybe I'll act.
Oh, wow.
When in fact, they're just putting more resources on you.
Wow, that's like psych. No, that wouldn't be good for Olga and I, because we just basically blurt out everything that we think.
And just to add, that's exactly what Soviet citizens and Russian citizens go through. My mom walked out every morning without fail, KGB standing there. She got a new job. They came, yanked her out of her job, and, took her into KGB headquarters for questioning, and there goes that job. So it was the same. I mean, and now with Russia, they do the same thing. You tweet something, retweet something. Yesterday, a human rights activist was the first one to be charged under a Foreign Agent Act for writing congratulations for the Nobel Peace Prize. So he got charged for writing congratulations. So, I mean, it's horrible what they do to Westerners and Putin has really brought the Soviet tactics back now to how it was.
Yeah.
So what is your stories?
Go ahead, Steve.
You have to beat the sneakers.
We're freaking out because I'm freaking out. Okay.
I think the creepiest experience, and there are a number to choose from, but for me, the sort of best combination, I think, of creepy and sort of also just having a lot of impact there was a time when I was in Moscow, and we had a very, very senior leader, CIA, come to visit, and that happened rarely, but in this particular case, there was a reason to do it, and so in this, again, I'm using air quotes, so this liaison relationship, so this contact we have with the Russian intelligence services happens in the Lubyanka, of course, which is a very, infamous building. And, there were countless dissidents and just regular Soviets and Russians, killed at the hands of guys like, Felix Dzerzhinsky in the basement of that building. And so it was creepy enough to have meetings with the Russian intelligence service in a building where Iron Felix, was reputed to come to his morning meeting, shooting his shirt cuffs and trying to get a couple of the blood stains, the blood spatter off of it because he had just shot somebody in the head in the basement. So that's the building that you have those meetings in. And we had the senior headquarters visitor come in. And when you have somebody senior come in, they take you through sort of like the big entrance, the main entrance. And so the cars dropped us off and we walked through that main entrance into the Lubyanka. And immediately to the right is a huge, and I don't just mean like a little bust that sits on your desk, but I mean probably several tons of copper. The bust of Felix Dzerzhinsky greeting you as you walked into the Lubyanka. And of course, my senior visitor just kind of walked past without even looking at it. And I looked at it and I said, God, I mean, we're going to a meeting with people who are essentially celebrating, again, their Chekist past, their oppressive, murdering past. It would not be, and I explained this to the senior officer later on when we were back in secure spaces in the embassy. I said, you realize that walking into the Lubyanka, past that bust of Felix Dzerzhinsky, it would be essentially no different if you were visiting Germany and you were visiting the German intelligence services and you went into BND headquarters and there on the right is a statue of Hitler or Goebbels or somebody like that. There is very little moral difference between those things. And to me, that was just chilling, that we were in that building with all those deaths and that man celebrated at the entrance, with a senior official. That gave me the heebie-jeebies.
Oh, man.
Right.
Well, it would.
And John, you can't get away. Do you have a story? What happened to you?
Oh, that was my other story.
Your own personal,
we want to know about you.
Shoes, not yours.
When I first went to Moscow, I was, undercover. Now the Russians knew who I was, so it was sort of a fake thing. But the embassy, when I got there, had a little trip from the embassy to the KGB museum, which is also in the Lubyanka. And I remember walking around with, 15 sort of non-intelligence Americans, and then me through their little museum. And the first room you come into is sort of a big official room with nice carpet with paintings of all the heads of the OGPU, the KGB, the Cheka, all the way around. And it was so the guide dutifully goes to each one and gives a little talk. This was, Yerenti Beria. He was the most important person. He was Stalin's aide. He was this and that. And he was then killed as an enemy of the people. And then they moved on to the next one. Like, but this is what Eric is the most important. He won this award.
Killed.
And then he was killed as an enemy of the people. And you go around this whole thing. You're like, this job is not something
you want.
You get to kill a couple million people, but you're going to buy the farm at some point. What an unhealthy.
Imagine recruiting youth into Russian intelligence services there. Like the Russian intelligence, okay, here, meet this one. He worked for us and did this, and he died. And that one.
But what's an interesting point is, at least during the Soviet Union, they had this communist ideal, and they had created this sort of nationalist ethos around communism and stuff. And so that, Russian intelligence officers and others around the world saw themselves as a superpower and working towards something bigger and better and more powerful. But you have to think about, one of the things we see now with the use of Novichok and the use of nerve agents and the murder of their citizens around the world and at home, Navalny, is I think they have to, Putin is sending a message. He knows that those official Russians who work on his behalf, no longer have that view of them as a superpower. They all know the system's corrupt. They know their bosses are making tons of money. They know that, Putin's one of the richest men in the world. But in that case, the Tsar, the Kremlin, has to make clear to those people who work for him there's a cost to pay. And that's why, when there's people like Skripal, they don't just, hit him in the head with a hammer or make it look like he was robbed, They make it clear that the state sanctioned this murder, and that the state will always reach out and find you and kill the people you care about, because those people have to understand, okay, everyone above me is corrupt. Maybe I'll do a deal with the devil and I'll work with the CIA or I'll work with the British or what have you. That's why Putin has to sort of, use the services as his weapon to punish those people and make it really clear as a message to everybody else that there's no room to maneuver.
Yep. That's tough.
Well, that's
it's
the way it is. It's the way it is, right? No, it just reminds me of a mafia don, as long, they keep you as long as you're useful, and then you're not useful anymore, so you're out, kind of thing. So I don't know whether it's comparable.
If you look at Russian intelligence in the lead up to World War II, arguably they were more focused on finding and liquidating Trotsky, enemies of the people, than they were on figuring out what Hitler was up to, right? So it's just part and parcel of a system and a service whose goal is keep the leadership in power at all costs. So domestically, no opposition; internationally, enemies always have to be off balance. And so, and the willingness to use brutality to do that. And so that in some ways, it's just not different. They're going to do whatever they have to do to keep Putin in power, because that's where their money is.
Yeah. But we're going to continue to shout them out, okay, and get this information out. Because exactly.
On the flip side, though, I have to say that I can't ever picture KGB agents like with the same Skripal, drinking and partying the night before. Like, that's the one little change I have seen between Soviet intelligence and Russian intelligence, that there, I mean, I don't think they go to the bathroom without getting permission. Whereas here, it's like the reason we even found out about the agents were because they had a party in the hotel room, you know? And that just shows you that even Putin's agencies, I mean, that makes them more dangerous because they are, you know, more sloppy these days.
Yeah.
I don't, you know, there's sort of that view out there that because they've been caught, they're sloppy. And I don't know if I buy it completely because, you know, there's a couple things. First of all, as people who did this for a living, Stephen, it's much harder in this day and age to cover all your tracks with big data out there and cameras and databases of every piece of travel and hotel rooms that all can be pulled together by, you know, almost any country. It's harder to completely go under the radar and do these things. And so, you know, getting caught is, you know, is part of the business. And the question is, how many times were they successful? You know, what happened is the British got a piece of information here that allowed them to put together all this stuff, to pull the cameras, to go back to the hotels, to test and pull all that stuff together. How many times were Russians and GRU and others successful going out and killing people and doing these things that didn't come across, you know? And so if they're killing 20 people and one time it comes out, I think Putin's okay with that. And he's okay with it because at the end of the day, you still want to send that message that we're killing people who cross me. And so I think he's comfortable with the fact, you know, he probably doesn't, you know, want it to happen, but when it does, it's not that big a deal. It still meets his needs.
No, I think what John said earlier is true. Sometimes he doesn't care because it's part of the operation to sow that terror. So, you know, it's okay if Skripal's, you know, attempted murders, in retrospect, turned out to be GRU guys, because the message is Skripal used to work for the GRU. Skripal thought he was safe after spying. And what happened? The GRU reached out and came very close to killing him and his daughter. And that's part of the message. So, you know, these two GRU boneheads get caught and do this ridiculous interview back in Moscow. But it's all, you know, the message still goes out to all current and former GRU officers. Look, we're going to come for you and your family if you guys screw it up and start working with the other side. So, yeah, I think in that case, and in other cases, it's certainly less sloppiness than it is just simply, we don't care. They ought to know that we came for them.
Hey, everybody. If you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to subscribe and please visit our website, KremlinFile.com. This is Season 1, Kremlin File, hosted by Olga Lautman and me, Monique Camarra. This is a Bunker Crew Media production with executive producers Marley Clements, Jack Bryan, Grant DeSimone, Ben Brett, and Jordy Mycelis of Midas Media, with associate producers Ruby Frankel and Sarah Metz. Theme music by Oreste Camarra. Sound editing and mixing by Joy Ellett. Subscribe to Kremlin File wherever you listen to podcasts.
When I was involved in research into Russia and Trump ties, somebody hacked my Amazon and decided to send a set of knives to Philadelphia.